Hello, my name is Olivia Cowen, and today I will be presenting Should You Swim with the Manatees at Crystal River? Right, so what is Crystal River? Crystal River is the only known legal place to swim with the Florida manatees in the United States. It is a very popular tourist destination in Central Florida, and it is known as the manatee capital of the USA, self-proclaimed. Up to 300,000 tourists each year come to this river to see the manatees. Crystal River is a very special place for manatee migration because its spring-fed waters stay about 72 degrees year-round. All right, so why do manatees rely on these waters in cold winter months? Well, because of their low metabolic rates, it causes a high sensitivity to cold temperatures. And unlike other marine mammals, manatees lack a layer of blubber insulation, making them very susceptible to heat loss. Manatees require a temperature above 68 degrees in order to survive. Exposure under 68 degrees could cause cold stress syndrome or even death. So, what are the migrational patterns of the Florida manatee, and where do they end up going to escape the cold? Well, Florida manatees rely on the warm waters of certain spring-fed rivers, such as the Blue Spring on the east coast and the Crystal River and Homosassa River on the west coast. In the winter months, up to 11,000 manatees can travel to Florida in order to escape colder temperatures. And when these manatees arrive, their days consist of grazing on seagrass and resting in the water column. Right, so in the Crystal River, you can pay to have your very own manatee swim with experience. Several companies offer these guided tours year-round, starting early in the morning until late in the evenings. Some of these companies do offer night tours with glow-in-the-dark gear, but not all of them do that, and I don't recommend doing that with anyone, but many companies claim that they take every precaution to protect the species and how every guests are debriefed on how interactions must go. So, what are the current protection measures put in place to protect the manatees? Well, there is a Manatee Manners video that is required by all tour companies to show guests. Operators vary in education to the public. Some companies go farther in educating the public than others. Some will just show the video, and some will talk about conservation efforts. Manatees have certain uncrossable zones called sanctuaries that the humans are not allowed to cross into. They are marked off by a white rope, and the existence of manatee sanctuaries that humans aren't allowed to cross into suggests that the mere presence of humans in the water disrupts manatee behavior in some way, but that is neither here nor there. Marine Mammal Protections Act of 1972 is a law that's in place to protect these manatees, and as well as the Federal Endangered Species Act of 1973 and the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act of 1978. And I will put the video of the Manatee Manners video in the description below. So, of the three laws that are in place to protect them, basically, I'm not going to read it here, but the whole point is that intentional or a negligent act that creates a disruption in the normal behavioral pattern of the manatees is illegal. So why are these laws difficult to enforce in all actuality? Well, the interpretation of harassment is ambiguous enough to be open to interpretation. It is very difficult to prove significant disruptions to daily manatee life, mostly because you really can't prove that, and because some manatees are okay with being touched, they tolerate it, but some do not, and it's very hard to prove it as like a whole of what is true about all manatees. A lack of research is also a problem with long-term effects of human to manatee interactions. It's not really recorded that often. And many factors that have to do with determining whether or not it's an egregious action versus a passable or minor action. So an egregious action would be maybe riding a manatee or slapping a manatee, kicking a manatee, harming it in some kind of way, whereas a passable or minor action would be like petting it, bumping into it on accident, and it's very hard to distinguish them when you're actually in court trying to enforce a law. Okay, so why is it important to never initiate contact? Well, manatees are wild animals. They are not domesticated animals. They have evolved their temperaments in order to optimize grazing, resting, and migrating. Because of their very docile nature, their actions can often be misconstrued, and increased human contact can make them used to human presence, which increases the likelihood of boat strikes and fishing gear entanglements because they swim closer to humans. There's less of a fear, so they're more likely to be boat strikes or fishing gear entanglements. So touching and crowding a manatee can cause them to exhibit such behaviors as sudden diving, avoiding resting spots, and even leaving warm water refuges, which can be very dangerous because of the reasons I listed before. So here are just a couple examples of people in Crystal River basically breaking the law. They are petting the manatees, they're chasing the manatee. You can see right here where this one's chasing the mother and calf. They're crowding, cornering, overcrowding them, constricting their movements, and just patronizing them, which is illegal. Some other examples are separating the calf of the mother or a manatee from the group. That is also illegal. And these are just some examples, but there are many, many videos of people even sitting on them, kicking them, running them over with their boats. It's very sad to see. And there's just so many examples. So I just wanted to go over some commonly misconstrued examples of manatee behavior. So sometimes when you pet a manatee, it'll roll over like it's enjoying it, like a dog. But in reality, this is just a common maneuver they exhibit in order to evade your hand. They don't really have the mobility in their neck and flippers to get away from you. So in order to escape, they have to like roll away in the water. And another example is that sometimes manatees are very curious and they want to like inspect you or your gear while you're diving. And manatees, they're very curious in nature and they don't really have any natural predators. I mean, sometimes alligators are considered their predator, but they usually aren't in the same waters as alligators. And this causes them to be a lot less cautious of humans and other animals. But them coming up to you is not an invitation for touching or hugging or anything that breaks the laws set in place to protect them from harassment. So here are some other important examples of habitat degradation in Crystal River, in Homosassa River and Kings Bay. So it is worth noting that the local developments and boat practices have been leading to certain habitat loss that directly affects these manatees every year. Increased shore erosion caused by local coastal construction and boat wakes leads to degradation of the estuary habitats that these manatees inhabit, and seagrass loss due to increased algal blooms caused by runoff of septic water and fertilizer in Kings Bay area and the Crystal River. And seagrass loss is very important because, as most people know, manatees primarily feed on seagrass as their food source. So what is good about these tours is that the tours themselves help people connect with these animals. It is a very magical experience. And the people that usually go on these tours are more willing to care about manatee livelihoods. The tours are a huge source of money for the local economy in Citrus County, Florida, which is where Crystal River is located. Some tours donate a certain percentage of sales to local manatee conservations, but it is important to note that not all companies do this. And if you were to swim with these animals, which I don't think you really should, but if you do, those would be the ones to choose. So how can we improve conditions for the manatees if they are still going to continue to use manatees to make money off of them and to do tours? I believe that they should give back in some kind of way, and this could be in donating certain percent of sales back to habitat restoration, or getting those that love the manatees to volunteer to plant seagrass in critical feeding areas, and to encourage the public to donate at the end of their tour to local conservation efforts. In the end, I really wouldn't recommend swimming with the manatees in Crystal River because while it may seem like a unique experience, it can cause stress and disturbance to these creatures in their home. Human interaction can disrupt their natural behaviors, and this is very crucial, especially in the winter months when they gather in these rings to rest and conserve their energy. Even with the laws set in place to protect them, illegal behavior from visitors is very common, and the laws just aren't enforced as they should, making the experience very unfair to the manatees that are just trying to live in peace. Instead, I recommend for those who want to experience seeing these creatures, they can view them from a dock or a boardwalk where they are guaranteed to not be disturbing them or their habitat. And if you must swim with them, I suggest again to find the most reputable tour guide that really cares about their conservation. Right, so that's the end of my presentation. Here are my citations. Thank you.